I'm Arya Schwartz along with Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr show where it's all about the W. We're in the middle of the WNBA Semifinals, and we are excited to welcome WNBA champion and current Dallas Wings head coach Brian Agler to the show to break down both series. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see the amazing staff's written content over at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com and patreon.com/winsidr. I'm excited to welcome two-time WNBA champion and current Dallas Wings head coach Brian Agler to the show. Brian, thanks so much for taking the time to meet with us and discuss the WNBA Semifinals 2020. How's it going?
Thank you very much for having me on. I think it's been very entertaining, and I'm anxious to see how all this plays out.
It's definitely been entertaining, and we're definitely anxious to see how it plays out. We'll start off with the Aces Sun series, maybe a little bit of a surprise to some of the listeners here. But I'm curious for you, kind of just start off the bat. Before the series started, and be honest, did you see the games being this close and Connecticut being up 2-1 at the end of Game 3?
Well, I told Kurt before I left that I could see them getting to the semifinals. That wouldn't shock me at all. They were playing really good basketball. Everybody's journey down there was a little bit different. Theirs was one of they, tried to add DeWanna Bonner to the mix. They had a very difficult schedule early. I think they played Washington early when Washington was playing really well, and they were losing a lot of close games. But the one thing that they have in their back pocket, and it's starting to show right now, is and especially when they've added Breon January, okay, she's an element there that they added halfway through, is they are really good defensively. And they make it really difficult for teams to score on them. And enough so where, they're probably not as good a perimeter shooting team as they've been in the past, but the quality of defense that they have keeps them competitive with anybody in the league. And now they sort of have this X factor of they're rallying around Alyssa Thomas. And of course, she's just, at times just dominating the game. And it's interesting to see how this plays out.
Coach, so happy to have you with us. Excited to watch you guys this year and Dallas's continued growth. I want to get to that a little bit later on. But back to just kind of the Aces and Sun. You mentioned Alyssa Thomas. That's kind of what everybody's been talking about. I think headed into this series, I was very curious, intrigued by just this matchup in general. Like to me, this is a toughness matchup. Two teams that really can get physical, that really try to win those toughness categories. I think we've seen that kind of play out so far, 3 games in, but I'm just kind of curious, like, am I off on that? Are these just, two teams that it's about winning paint points. It's about getting to the free throw line. It's about those hustle plays, those toughness plays. And because of Alyssa Thomas, that's why Connecticut's having so much success.
I totally agree with you. To win a championship at this elite level, it doesn't matter if it's the WNBA or the NBA, you have to have some intangible ingredients of toughness, both physical and mental, to sustain and to get a win in a series, to beat a really good team 3 times within 5 games. You've got to have that, because all these teams in this league are talented. Some are more than others, and the teams are well coached. They're going to be prepared. So now, to me, it's going to be the intangible stuff that will take over. And throughout the season, the regular season, Vegas really had this toughness ingredient that they would instill on you defensively. They would get you shut down, and then they would also have the ability to score in transition. And of course, they are always going to be very good in the quarter-court offense, and they could run their stuff. Now, they've met their match now, because Connecticut And part of why they're so tough right now is because of all the adversity they had to go through early in the season, taking losses. And it just toughens you up. It makes your focus switch and get stronger to have success. They weren't worrying about 5 games into the season. They weren't worried about winning a championship. They were just worrying about getting better and winning a game. And when you can get your focus that tight and you continually do it game after game, that's what gets you over the hump. And so I thought Vegas initially would go in and win this series, but the will that Connecticut's playing with right now is impressive. And I don't know if it's the will of Connecticut that's making Vegas struggle offensively, or if it's Vegas just not being in sync. I don't know which one it is, but it's definitely there. I don't think Vegas is clicking right now like they did in the regular season.
Well, that's a perfect segue to this. I'm curious, what is going wrong for the Aces, and what do they need to change so far in this series to pull out a victory and get to the finals? Because I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, somebody else needs to step up besides Asia. I mean, she's doing everything for this team, but as we saw in the most recent game, in Game 3, like, she can have a great game, but there's still some frustration and lack of production from some of the other key players on this roster.
Well, I'll be honest with you. If it wasn't probably the last 6 or 7 minutes of Game 2, this series had been over right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
and it had been over. And so they were lucky. Vegas caught a break that Asia got freed up in the last few minutes of that fourth quarter in Game 2, and Alyssa Thomas was out. I thought Vegas played better last night than they had throughout the game. They were getting another dimension from McCautry, scoring a little bit, but which they're going to need. They've become single dimensional. Everything is Asia Wilson, and Connecticut's doing a great job of congesting everything else, and they're almost like challenging Vegas to take perimeter shots, and everybody's hesitating. Now, they hit a couple last night. Camby hit one in the corner. Robinson hit a 3. McCautry hit some perimeter shots. There was a big call made last night that probably swung the game when Jackie went into the lane with the ball, shot it over Breon January, and the charge was called. That, to me, that could have gone either way. So that call right there probably swung the game. Because I think that shot would have put Vegas back up, and maybe it got maybe a 3-point play, but they went the other way. And I thought after that call, Vegas just got out of sorts offensively.
Yeah, I mean, this was a game with 15 lead changes and 14 different ties. I mean, I don't want to sit here and act like, Connecticut's just dominating this series. Obviously, this is going to be a bloodbath until the finish. But for me, I agree with what you're saying. For me, I think it's Kayla McBride. She's a bit of this X factor. And Ari, I know we kind of talked about this before this series, that she's got to be making shots. She finishes 1 for 7 last night. They're going to have to get more from her. And as coach is saying, a little bit more from anyone other than Wilson, and I agree that was a very pivotal moment. But before we move on, I think this is going to 5. I have a feeling that Las Vegas is going to come out with guns a-blazing on Sunday. Coach, what are your predictions?
I think it's up in the air. I think that no matter what happens, you're not going to take away Connecticut's defense. You got to remember that they might have the best defender in the league in Thomas, but they also have 2 elite perimeter players. I think this is what Kayla McBride's facing. She's either getting guarded by Jasmine Thomas or Breon January. And trust me, I know how good those 2 are. They can really lock people up. And because of the lack of depth on perimeter shooting from Las Vegas, they're very much a in the paint type team. They've had a couple games where they've hit multiple 3-point shots, but rarely. It's to the point now where, and I agree, Kayla McBride, Sugar Rogers, somebody's going to have to free up Asia Wilson. Camby, somebody. I don't know who it's going to be, but that's going to have to take place. And I'll tell you what, it would not shock me at all if Connecticut wins this in 4. If Thomas can stay healthy, health is going to play a factor in both sides. I thought we'd see more resiliency from Vegas down the stretch yesterday, but it's almost like they went the other direction. It just sort of, something's going on there. I'll be honest with you. When I see that team play now compared to where I saw them play in the season, they're not clicking right now.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think Connecticut's defense is frustrating them. That they're making it more difficult for them to score. And so when things become more difficult, how is your team going to deal with that adversity? And at this moment, Vegas has not figured that out.
Well, as of right now, I mean, it's been a great matchup. And like you were talking about, the backcourt of Connecticut has been stifling the Vegas Aces. It'll be an interesting one, especially if Connecticut makes it to the finals, coming into the playoffs with a sub 500 record. Obviously, that one will be for the history books of the WNBA. But I'm curious for you, something that often gets talked about in a normal season is, going away for you're down 2-1 and you have to go play in Connecticut, or Connecticut has to worry because they're up 2-1 and they're going to go play in Vegas, and kind of that element of the home court advantage. So I'm curious for you if you could, shed some light through those experiences, the pluses and minuses, the positives and negatives of not really having that in this series, for both series, actually.
Well, yeah, I think part of I really like our playoff format right now. Now there's debate on should the first 2 rounds be longer series. And I go back and forth. I think I do. Obviously, we have our format set like this for TV. This is what ESPN wanted, and we sort of tailored it for that. But I also think that there's an element here that we're forgetting about. You feel like you're rewarding the top 2 seeds to get buys all the way through. But from my vantage point and being there, I don't like that because you lose your rhythm. And that's what Vegas did. They sat there for several days while Connecticut got 2 wins under their belt, got their mojo, got their rhythm back, got their confidence going, and then they come in and play Vegas and really throttled them game 1. And then you saw what happened with Seattle, after sitting out several games in a time period, and Minnesota coming in with some rhythm. Minnesota could have easily won that first game.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you add, I know I'm jumping to the Seattle, Minnesota, I'm just using it as an example.
Right.
And if you top that off with Sue Bird and Stewart both missing their last 2 or 3 games of the regular season, sitting out, it took that. Sue looks like she's more rhythm than Stewart is at the moment. But there's an element there of sitting out, how it can take away from you as much as it gives you an opportunity to rest.
Well, those are great points. Definitely, everybody wants those coveted double buys, but they definitely have their negatives, and I think it's important to kind of talk about that. And like you said, we've kind of seen them play out, especially when you have certain key players basically sitting out for 2 weeks. Definitely takes a minute.
Can I add one
Yeah.
more thing to that? Going back
Absolutely.
to the home court advantage, I didn't get a chance to answer that. Sure. And I think because these games, it's less of an advantage now to have the double bye because there's no home court advantage.
Right.
You're sitting there, and a lot of times your home crowd can energize you to get a win or 2. That's why you want that home court advantage. You don't have the travel now where, like, for example, let's look at Connecticut's situation. If Connecticut was as a 7th seed in a typical season, they would have traveled their first round, and then they would have traveled to the second round. So they've sat there and played 2 neutral court games in their first 2 rounds. And that's been a benefit to them. Now, I'm not taking away anything from them. I'm just saying it's just part of the process, was part of what we're all dealing with. That element of travel and playing away has not been a factor for Connecticut because it doesn't exist.
Oh, yeah. And I would even top that and say, is Alyssa Thomas able to play in game 3 if you include in possible travel time that would have happened? Would she be able to get the rehab that she needed to get to this point in play? I don't know. And to your point about the playoff formatting, I love the playoff formatting. My one critique is the issue that I think has been brought up a good amount on social media, which is the 3 and 4 seed having to be put in a situation where they worked really hard to get those spots, but yet are a one and done. But then on the other hand, as you were talking about, if you give them a series, then that break that the 1 and 2 seed get is just that much longer. So it's an enigma. I don't have the answer for it. I just wanted to get in my 2 cents. But I know, Rachel, you want to bring up the Storm links. Let's run over there. Don't forget to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app to the Winsidr Daily Show, the only show that breaks down the games after they happen in depth, in detail. Winsidr.com for all your written content, and Winsidr Network on your favorite podcast app for a collection of WNBA podcasts.
Yeah, switching it over to Storm and Lynx. I mean, Minnesota almost stole game one. They did. And I want to ask whether you're surprised by that or not. I think I probably know the answer, but as of right now, the Storm are leading 2-0. You really felt like game one, Minnesota deserved to win that game. What are your thoughts, Coach?
I think Minnesota has played really well in this series. I know that they're down 0-2. I think Cheryl and her staff, Lynette, Katie, Rebecca, all those people have done a remarkable job this year. And I've told them that to their face when I was down there. I really, my hat's off to them. They've done a really good job.
Yeah.
I think that reason I say that about Minnesota playing well is because I keep Seattle in such high regard. They're sort of the elite of the league. And I know how difficult they are to not only to defend because of how they can stretch the floor, and they have playmakers on the floor, and they have arguably one of the best ever point guards playing. And even though I know she's almost 40 years old, it's not her physical ability, it's her brain and her ability to think the game and massage the game and manipulate the game. That is why she's such a great player. And then you've got Brianna Stewart, who, she could, last 2 or 3 years, it'd been easy to name her MVP of the league just because she's that versatile and potent offensive player. But to me, what the separating factor right now for Seattle, and without this person, this would be a 500 series, or maybe they could even be down, is Jewell Loyd. I think Jewell Loyd right now is playing her best basketball of her career at this moment. Not necessarily the whole season, but she's had some really good games. I'm talking about right now. She's hit some huge shots that have been very timely for Seattle when they've struggled to score. And those three right there, of course, Alicia Clark we kept her, on the roster then in Seattle when I was coaching. I know what kind of competitor she is, and their depth in the post with Howard and Russell and the young Australian. They've got depth, and they've got shooters off the bench. They're tough to defend, and not only that, they're one of the best defensive teams. They're very aggressive. They turn you over. And I think if Minnesota can still stay with this team, as long as they don't turn the ball over, and as long as Collier doesn't get in foul trouble.
Yep.
And last night she got in foul trouble, and it just really hurts Minnesota when she's not on the floor.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, for me, looking at game one of the big reasons Minnesota was able to, as Rachel pointed out, kind of felt like they lost the game. They could have won it. They should have won it. Was Nafisa's ability to score at many different levels. But I'm curious for you, what has Minnesota been doing well that's kept them alive? Yes, they're down 2-0, but it's not as distant as that record might seem.
Yeah. Minnesota's, first of all, they execute their offense really well, and they're really solid defensively. They're not overly athletic. This isn't the old Minnesota Lynx of 3 or 4 years ago. This is a different type of team. More three-point shooting. They put a plethora of three-point shooters on the floor. I think the key for Seattle, what they've done defensively that's got them to 2-0, is they've neutralized Dangerfield. Dangerfield has been the X factor offensively for them just because her ability to score at different levels. And her, obviously she can shoot the three, but she's lightning quick. She's good in pick and roll, and she can get it to the rim. So Seattle is up 2-0 to me because of how Jewell Loyd's hit timely shots and because Seattle's defense has neutralized Dangerfield. And, of course, that's Alicia Clark. They've got her matched up on Dangerfield. And but Minnesota's doing a lot of good things. They're efficient. They shoot the ball well from the three. They're solid defensively. Collier is a special player. She reminds me a lot of Swin Cash from this standpoint. Her motor continually goes. She never stops. She's gonna outwork you every second of the game. And if you don't match that same intensity and focus, she's gonna take advantage of you. And in game one, I thought she did a great job on Stewart, especially down the stretch. Neutralized Stewart down the stretch.
She's been so good. I mean, she's just like canceling her out, especially down at the rim. I mean, what she blocked her like 3 times, and she's been such a force inside, really elevating her play. Those final like 4.5 minutes of the first half in game 2, to me, were the deciding factor. You know, Seattle ends up going on a 14-0 run. Collier's on the bench in foul trouble. It almost felt like they really couldn't get over that hump. It was enough of a hole that they couldn't get quite over. And like to your point, it goes back to Collier being on the floor and just how important that is. I don't know if Minnesota can steal a game or not. I hope we can push it to 4. I guess we will see. I don't necessarily have a prediction. But in your mind, Coach, what do the Lynx have to do on Sunday to steal one?
Well, they got to keep Collier on the floor. They got to find a way to free up Dangerfield. They've got to get her into double digits, mid-teens, at least mid-teen scoring. Odyssey, to me, has been playing well. She's been aggressive. They're going to have to hit some threes. Carlton is, in game 1 hit some threes, and she's hit a couple even yesterday. But they're going to have to get more of those shots going. I think Donis has played pretty well as well. But the key is Collier on the floor and Dangerfield, getting Dangerfield freed up, and not turning the ball over. Because if you get too loose offensively against Seattle, they're gonna score on you in transition. And I think there's another element here. I see Seattle they're going to steadily keep improving now through the playoffs because they haven't had Bird all year. Stewart looked out of shape in game 1. She looked winded. They played her big minutes. They played her like mid-30s in minutes played. She looked winded. I give Collier a lot of credit for defending her, but at the same time, I've never really seen Brianna Stewart succumb to that kind of defense around the basket one-on-one. She usually finds a way to score, get fouled, and that just wasn't happening. So she looked tired to me. But I see them starting to get their legs now, and that's to take nothing away from Minnesota. Look, Seattle's a great team. Minnesota has nothing to be ashamed of. Can they win the game in this series? I don't know. I think it's going to be really tough because I just see Seattle continually get better. And Sue Bird, look, she's been here a lot. She knows the value of she respects everybody in this league, and she knows how a team can lose momentum. So trust me, they're not talking about letting up. They're going to put their foot to the gas pedal right now, and I think they want to get this behind them and really start focusing on one opponent to try to win that championship.
You guys heard it here from WNBA champion Brian Agler, current head coach of the Dallas Wings. We're going to catch those games this Sunday starting at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, followed up at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Seattle, Minnesota. But, Coach, before we let you go, let's talk Dallas Wings for a second. You guys barely missed the playoffs. I mean, it came down to the wire between you, Washington, and Atlanta. I know that had to be kind of gut-wrenching, especially that final game as you were waiting to see if you were going to make it in or not. But you had some big-time, plays out of Arike, who had a phenomenal year. She was outstanding. Her game continues to elevate. I mean, to me, in my opinion, it's just a matter of time before we're talking about her as an MVP in the league. But, Coach, just some of your initial thoughts now that you've had some time away, you're out of the bubble, you're able to reflect on your season. How do you feel about your team right now?
I really like our young core. We've got a core group of people that really want to win and are willing to do what it's going to take to win. And look, it's a lot easier said than done in this league. We do have a really young team. There's a lot of things that they have to learn about and learn how to play together against these really quality individuals and teams that we're playing against. But with our draft picks, Satu and Ty and Bella, And then our second-year players, which we have obviously Enrique and Marina and Lou, and you throw in there Alicia Gray. There's really a good core group to build around. And I know I might be missing some people here, but that's a really quality group, and they are really bought into growing together. And I think that's really important. We have to get better defensively. In the last 12 games of the season, which is a little bit over half, we led the league in scoring. So we're able to do that, and I think we would get better at that when we keep adding draft picks and hopefully have some luck in free agency and keep tinkering with our roster and those things. But as long as we will commit to the defensive end, then I think we can get real competitive. So it's exciting I haven't coached a young team in a while, so I'm used to coaching these veteran players, and we're used to really competing at this time of the year to get into the championship. But it's also refreshing to help mold a young group and teach them how to be pros, teach them how to have success in the WNBA, and hopefully teach them the ingredients it takes to be a championship contender.
So you touched on these young players. A player who I've just been amazed with, who I don't think has gotten enough attention or media coverage this season, was Ty Harris. I mean, throughout the season, she looked ready for the moment. Obviously, there were some rookie moments, but she looked so calm, cool, and collective, making big shots and just head-turning plays. Talk to me a little bit about Ty Harris, what you saw from her growth in her rookie year, and kind of what we can expect from her coming into her second year.
Yeah, she's got a chance to be a really good player. The reason I say a chance is because I also know that you have to put a lot of individual work in, and the players that will do that will be the ones that stick on rosters and then will take advantage of their opportunities. If you look at this league right now, and I'll say this about every team, if you look at each roster, a third of these players on these rosters will not be a part of our league 2-3 years down the road. It's just that kind of turnover with salary cap issues and new players coming in. Some players really working at it, some players not working at it. It just happens that way. Ty is one that if she puts her time and effort into the game, and she's over in Turkey right now, she's got a chance to be a really good point guard in this league because she thinks the game. She has a seriousness to the game. She understands the game. She talks coach talk, and that's coming from playing for Don down at South Carolina. She's been well coached. She's been challenged. She'll take on a challenge, and she's going to study herself, and she's going to study her opponents, and she's going to figure out what it's going to take for her to play quality minutes. And so I agree with you. I'm excited about her future.
Well, you guys heard it here. That is Coach Brian Agler, head coach of the Dallas Wings, giving us his breakdown of the WNBA semifinals. Coach, thank you so much for your time. Hope you're enjoying your time out of the bubble, and we're looking forward to what is next with the Dallas Wings.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
You have a good one, Coach.
Thank you. You too.